I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. The founding fathers had houses that were part of their imagination in the 18th century. Many of those houses are gone, but there is a bevy of them in a new book from Myron Magnet. It's called The Founders at Home. The story is the building of America. Yes, the revolution, the success, the republic, democracy, 1735 to 1817. But this is also these men, their families, as houses. We're looking at the remains of their understanding of republicanism or democracy or taking on the world's best military. Myron, a very good evening to you. Congratulations. It's great fun. Your book is gorgeous. And I want to start with the Livingstons, Governor Livingston of New Jersey and Liberty Hall. It's late in the important details of his life that he comes to building Liberty Hall. He is acquiring land through the 1760s, and finally he looks for what you say, peace. So he moves to Liberty Hall. Who was Livingston that this satisfied him, the governor of New Jersey, at this critical moment for American history because the bayonets are coming? Good evening to you, Myron.
Oh, how are you, John? It's a pleasure to be with you. Who is he? Well, he's not a New Jerseyite to start with. He's a New Yorker, and he was born on the princely Livingston Manor up the Hudson, where he had a 250-square-mile domain, which made him rather uncomfortable, to tell you the truth. And his fame was, in my opinion, he's a New York journalist, so am I, so I feel like he's a soul brother. He ran a magazine in the 1750s that was absolutely crucial in diffusing throughout the colonies the ideas of government by consent, the right to depose a tyrannical ruler, and the importance of free thought and freedom of inquiry. And, John Adams said that the real American Revolution happened 15, 20, 25 years before the shots rang out at Livingston and Concord. It was a cultural revolution. And I focus on William Livingston first because he was, in a way, the first continental figure to sow the seeds of that cultural revolution. And Madison and his fellow Princetonians were still reading him a generation later.
The magazine is Reflectors.
The Independent Reflector. Wouldn't you love to run a magazine called that?
And after 52 issues, they suspend publication unannounced. But in it, we find quotes, all of which are challenging the power of the Crown to appoint judges, to just from London say, these are the people who will judge you. Why was that upsetting to the colonists?
Well, they had read their Lord Coke, they'd read their Locke, and they knew that the one great bulwark that citizens had against executive authority was a jury of their peers and independent courts. And once the Crown started appointing judges whom they could fire, then of course they controlled the judges. And once they started meddling with juries, as they tried to do in some of the cases that Livingston was concerned with, well, then there's no protection whatsoever. You just have totalitarianism, and Livingston was very, very afraid of it.
This phrase just floored me, Myron. Appointing judges, quote, who depended on the smiles of the Crown for their daily bread.
Right. Well, you know what that's like. It makes you an apparatchik.
And what we have here is Mr. Livingston pushing back. He's a jurist. He pushes back. But at the time of his pushing the Stamp Act, the Intolerable Acts, New York was ruled by a man named Colden. And Colden was an excellent governor for the Crown. And I never thought until I read of Mr. Livingston of New York as a hotbed for trouble. That was supposed to be Virginia.
Oh, no. New York was always having turmoil. It was having turmoil since this famous trial in 1735 with which I began, in which a different governor tries to prosecute the printer of a magazine for seditious libel, for suggesting that for a royal governor to meddle with judges is tyranny. And it continued to be right up to the Revolution. We had our own Tea Party here, just a little bit afterwards, after the Boston Tea Party. We had riots. We had Sons of Liberty mob. And think about it. I mean, of the great revolutionary leaders, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, William Livingston, they're New Yorkers. And you know, we sometimes think that our history in New York begins with our ancestors sailing under the Statue of Liberty's torch. Not at all. I mean, this is a very, very old settlement, and had a very, very distinct culture in the early 17th century, which in some ways is the culture that pervaded America in the end.
Be warned that Myron's book, after reading through it, and we're about to talk about it, Myron and I are suddenly chauvinists for New York. And in addition, we are keen for the Federalists and look with great discouragement towards the Republicans. We'll get there in their houses in a moment, but press Livingston here. This is a man who, you quote saying, set off a contagion of liberty. Gosh, they were good with phrases, Myron.
Weren't they?
But he is... he's defeated, or at least sad-eyed, about where it comes to in 1773 as he turns 50. He wants to retire, and I guess you'd have to say history won't let him. He was a lucky fellow to be in an interesting time.
And not only that, of course, he had 3 gorgeous daughters. So history kept sailing across the bay to his house.
You mean the suitors?
The suitors,
Yes.
You bet. And who were the suitors?
Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, and
Gouverneur Morris.
Yes. Yes. Well, we'd have to say his daughters held their own with these 3 suitors, and we'll get to John Jay in just a moment, but I want to press also this, because there's an edible drama here. Benjamin Franklin's illegitimate son becomes the Crown's governor of New Jersey, and he is opposed in the wiring diagram to William Livingston. William Livingston spends the war on the run with his family, and Liberty Hall is badly treated by the Crown. They almost as if they thought if they couldn't hang him, they'd wreck the house.
They were trying to kill him. They had freelance gangs of assassins out trying to kill him, so he sent his family off to safety with relatives. And meanwhile, he and his little legislature went hither and yon up and down the state. And of course, New Jersey, like New York State, was like there was a civil war between the patriots and the loyalists. And you can imagine this is a situation in which thugs thought, oh, fine. Well, in that case, we'll go out and we'll maraud among those who are on the opposing side. And if anybody catches us, we'll just say, well, you know, these are outlaws, and we're here in the king's name gathering supplies for the royal forces. So it was as close as you could come to the Hobbesian war of all against all in the 1770s in New York and New Jersey. Once the war broke out, it was awful, and William Livingston was right in the middle of it.
We go south, Tidewater Plantation south, because in Myron Magnet's book next, we go to the background of the Republicans who opposed the Federalists in the period in which the country is coming together after the Revolution. The book is The Founders at Home, The Building of America, 1735 to 1817. Myron Magnet is the author. I'm John Batchelor. This is The John Batchelor Show.